So the first thing we're going to need to do is go ahead and set everything up to store our backups and tell it where we want to store them. To do that, go over into the dashboard of WordPress, open up the WP Vivid Backup section and choose Backup and Restore. Inside there, we can now go ahead and set things up. So the first thing we need to do is go to Remote Storage. Once we choose that, you can see we have a selection of different locations in which we can send our backup files. Now you can also do local backups, which will store copies on the server itself, but for security purposes and for just the ease of knowing that if anything goes wrong with your server, you've got backups somewhere else, I would recommend using something like Google Drive or Dropbox. All of these you can get with free accounts with plenty of storage to manage most backup processes. So we're going to be using Dropbox for this example. I've only got a free account in Dropbox, so all I need to do is select that from the tabs, choose the Authenticate with Dropbox option. That will then go ahead, connect that up to Dropbox, then take me back to the website. I just need to log back in. And we now have a connection with Dropbox. Very, very easy. But if you use anything like Google Drive, Microsoft OneDrive, the process is pretty much the same no matter what option you choose. Once authenticated, you can then choose that as the backup storage location whenever you make a backup, and then when you want to restore things should something go wrong. So you can see Dropbox is now being connected. All we need to do is give this an alias. So we're just going to call this sample. You can see that's been set up. We've got this set as the default storage location. So if you have multiple different options, you may connect Google Drive, Dropbox, and Microsoft OneDrive. Then you can set whichever one of those you want as your default storage option. In this example, we're going to stick with just Dropbox. Once that's been done, we can click Add Now. And that has now connected that storage up. As you can see, our storage list is now shown at the bottom of the page, showing us any and all of the storage options. With that being said, all we need to do now is go back into the backup and restore option. And now we can go ahead and choose what type of backup and where we want to store it. You can see we have three options in the free version. We can choose to back up the entire database and all the files, so basically all of WordPress. You can choose to just back up the WordPress files, ignoring the database, or you can do the opposite, just back up the database, ignoring all the files. For this example, we'll choose database and files, so we get everything. You can then see we can choose to say between local, which is basically on the server where your website resides, or to send this to remote storage. As you can see, all the different remote storage options are listed underneath. The one that's in color, or the ones that are in color, are the ones that you've got selected and connected to your account. You see, Dropbox is the only option we have. So we'll say send backup to remote storage. All we need to do now is check the option for backup now. You can also set this backup can only be deleted manually. In other words, it can't be deleted inside the WP Vivid Backup plugin. This is great if you want to add an extra level of security for people that maybe don't have access to your offsite storage and you don't want them to accidentally delete anything to do with the site inside the dashboard of WordPress. Great if you're doing this for clients. We'll leave that unchecked and we'll select the option for backup now. Once we do that, that's now going to go ahead, create a backup on our local site. Once that's finished, it's then going to connect up to Dropbox in this example and send all those files over. So depending upon the size of your site, this can take from a few minutes up to quite a long time for much, much bigger sites. So we're going to let that go ahead, upload everything, and then we'll take a look moving on. There we go. After a few minutes, you can see that's now completed and we have a new backup stored in our offsite location. If for any reason you don't see them after this is finished, simply hit the scan, upload backup or receive backup just to go ahead and just make sure that everything is where it should be and it's been uploaded as you'd expected. Okay, so once that's done, we've now got a backup of our site all set up, ready to go. Now, the other thing you can do is you can also set this up to be scheduled to automatically run in the background. Yes, it's great to have a hosting company that does backups, but it's also good to have a solid redundancy plan. In other words, if something goes wrong and your hosting account doesn't have a recent backup, or the backup comes corrupted, or any of a million other reasons, you want to make sure you've got your own. So what you can do to do that is hop over into the Schedule tab. If we open that up, you can see we can now go ahead and enable a backup schedule. We'll choose that option. You can see we can set this to have 12-hour backups, daily, weekly, fortnightly, or monthly. Custom, again, is a pro feature. But for most use cases, a weekly or daily option should be more than enough. If you run a busy e-commerce store, you may want to do something more often, at which point the pro plan may be something you want to take a look at. However, for this example, we can simply say we want to set to daily. Again, like we saw at the beginning, we can choose whether we want to back up the database and files, just the database, or just the files. In most cases, database and files is what you're going to want. Then you can say save backups to localhost onto the local server or send them over to your remote storage. And again, you can choose which remote storage option you want to use. Once you've done that, you hit save changes and that is your entire schedule set up, ready to go. And that's it. You can set it and forget it. Now you've got backups, but you can send over to your remote storage location every 12 hours, every day, every week, fortnight, month, whatever it is you've set it up to. Really, really simple. Now let's just say that everything has gone to pot on your website. You need to restore from a backup. How do we do it? Well, it's very easy. Log into your dashboard of WordPress. As you can see, we've already done that. We can then go down to our backup inside our backup and restore section, and all we need to do is click on restore. You can also click download to download a backup of this to have another location. You may want to keep a local copy as well as a cloud copy. You can have that option if you want to. We'll click on restore. That's then going to go ahead, retrieve a copy of that to our local storage so we can back it up quicker. All we need to do is click on retrieve the backup to localhost. We'll select that. Obviously, make sure you've got enough space on your server to do this. I would generally recommend 2 to 3 times the actual amount of space that you're using on your website to have that there for unpacking this and then restoring everything. So that's now going to go ahead, download a copy to our localhost, our server, and then we can go ahead and we can restore from there. So after a few moments, the file has now been downloaded to our local host. All we need to do is select the restore option, click on OK to confirm that we're happy with this. We haven't accidentally done something we don't really want to do. We'll click OK, and that's now going to go ahead and restore that. You'll get a little log that'll show us everything that's going on. Once it's finished, as you can see, we'll be notified to tell us that restoration is completed. We'll click on OK. That will then take us back to our site, and you can see we now have everything restored. If we hop over to our site itself and refresh, there's our site. Everything is as it's expected to be. You can see everything's in place. If we go to any of our other pages, our about page, for example, you can see that everything is in place, restored very quickly and easily. So that's how easy it is to go through the whole process of backing up and restoring your website should something go wrong using WP Vivid Backup. Now you'll know when it comes to updating WordPress, updating your plugins, those kinds of things, it is generally recommended that you use a staging site, especially if you're doing things like updating tools like WooCommerce, Elementor, core things that could cause problems if something goes wrong with that update. So how do we go about creating a staging site? Again, WP Vivid Backup gives us an option to do just that. If we come over into our dashboard, into the WP Vivid Backup section and choose the option for staging, we can now go ahead and create a staging site, or we can create a fresh WordPress install. All this will be done on the same server in its own subsection of your entire account. So what we need to do, click on create a staging site. You can see this now asks us a few questions, and don't be put off by this. It's not as complex as it may first appear. You can see directory to install the staging site, the website route into WP content or into a subdomain. This is a pro feature, so if you have the pro plan and you want to use subdomains, for example, it could be staging.yourwebsite.com, you can set that up, but you need the pro account to do it. For this example, we'll set the website route. That's perfectly fine. You can then see we can create a custom directory. So my staging 01, we can leave that as it is, or we can rename it to something a little bit more in keeping with what we need. It then tells us exactly where this is going. We can see the URL, the directory. We can see all that information. We can also set up the prefix that's going to be used inside our database. You can then see install the staging site to the live sites database, which is recommended. So in other words, if you have an account that has multiple databases, this is giving you option to only use the main database that your main site is stored on, or you can install it to a separate database should you want to make sure that it doesn't have any impact upon your main database. Obviously, before you do any of this, take a backup like we've just covered, so if anything goes wrong, you can restore your database and you can restore your entire site before you do anything to do with staging site. We'll leave this set to go into the live database, which is the recommended method. This is just a test site, so I don't mind. Choose whichever is the best option for you at this point. Then you can see you can choose what you want to copy to the staging site. The database will need to be copied. All the files and folders will also need to be copied. But you can also, if you have the Pro plan, exclude additional files and folders. Okay, so once everything is set up and we're happy with it, we can click on Create Now. We say, okay, we want to start creating that staging site. We'll click OK. That's now going to go ahead and get everything set up for us. And again, you can see we've got a full log of exactly what's going on for the entire process of setting up our staging site. And there we go. That's now completed the whole process. You can see all the information we need is all listed on here. The site name, the home URL, the admin URL, database prefix, those kinds of things. So you can also see we can update the staging site, which is a pro feature, and copy the staging site to live with as a pro feature. So you are going to need to have the pro one if you want to simply just take what you do in the update and the staging site and push that to the live site. But if all you want to do is run some tests to make sure that the plugins work and fault find should something go wrong, then the free version gives you more than enough. So let's open up a new tab. Let's pop in the URL to this particular staging site. Let's open that up. And you can see there's our identical duplicate of our site. There's our home page. We can choose any of our other pages, our service page, for example. And you see if you take a look at the URL at the top, this is all done on the staging site. And you can log in and you can run your updates and you can do all those things should you need to, just to test things out. And that's your staging site all complete and set up. And then once you've gone ahead and you've finished making sure that everything works and either roll this out or you use the pro features to sort of push this to the live site, you can then simply go ahead, click on the delete option to remove the copy of this. So we'll click on delete. Again, we'll get prompted to make sure we're happy with that. We'll click OK. That's now going to go ahead and remove that, the database entry, all the files, folders, and everything else from the, completely remove the staging site. It is that simple to get everything set up so you can go ahead with a staging site and test everything out. There's been many times where you want to migrate your website from one server to another. It could be you want to move hosting companies, you could be creating a site on one domain and you then want to push it onto the new domain when it's finished and ready to go live. Whatever the reason, WP Vivid Backup makes the whole process really, really simple. I've already created a new site with WordPress. There's nothing on here. This is a blank install. And this is the first thing we need to do. All we've got to do now is go ahead and log into the dashboard. As you can see, this is a totally clean install of WordPress. There's a couple of updates, but we don't need to worry about those because we're going to be completely replacing this domain anyway. All we need to do is go into our plugins, add new. We're going to search for WP Vivid Backup and we'll install and activate it. So now that the plugin is installed and activated, I've come into the backup and restore section inside WP Vivid Backup. We're going to hop over to the key section. The most important thing to remember here is we're going to grab the key for this from our blank site. This is going to be where our site will end up. It's going to be migrated to. So once we've done that, you can see we can create a new key, and the key is a unique identifier for this that allows us to connect the two different sites. So all we need to do is choose how long this key will be valid for. If this is something you're going to do right now and you do it yourself, you can set this to be something as low as 2 hours. We can click on generate, and that will now generate a custom unique key that will be valid for 2 hours. All we need to do is copy that from there. So we'll just select it, choose copy, and now we're going to go over into the site that we want to take this from. So this is where our site is starting off from, which we migrated to. So once we're inside there, we're going to come into the backup and restore section, open up the auto migration section, and you can see right at the top is the location for pasting the key in. Let's select that, paste our key in, and click save. That's now connected that up for us. These two sites are now connected to each other. We can then go ahead and we can choose what exactly do we want to migrate over. Again, like we've seen in the backup and restoration, the database and files only. Obviously, for this example, we want everything. So once we've done that, everything is set up. All we need to do is click on the clone, then transfer. It's worth noting, though, that if your starting site, the site where everything is set up, ready to go, you're migrating from, if you have any things like redirect plugins, firewall, security plugins, caching plugins, and so on, disable those before you do the migration, just to make sure things don't go a little bit squiffy when you're migrating the site over. Once we finish, though, let's click on clone, then transfer. Okay, so once that's finished, you can see we're now given a little notification telling us exactly what to do. We'll click on OK. So now let's just go ahead, open up our second site. We'll refresh this just to make sure that everything is ready. And as you can see now, we've got one backup in place. This is where things have been migrated over. All we need to do now is click on the restore option, choose restore, say yes, we're sure. And that's now going to go through the process of migrating the site over, unpacking this, and then opening the site up ready with all of the files transferred over for us. Now this might sound a little bit confusing, but the reality is it's like creating a backup, sending that back over up to your new site, then unpacking that backup, overwriting all the existing files with the backed up version, and therefore you have that migrated site in place. Once that's finished, we'll click on OK. You can see that now logs us out because obviously we've got different details, different login details, different database details, all those kinds of things. We'll log into that account. Everything is back in place. And now if we go ahead and open up the site, you can see now, if we take a look at the URL, this is where we migrated to. So we've now got an exact duplicate of that site on a completely different URL. Everything is in place. Everything has been set up. Again, if we go over to any of the pages, everything is there for us. Services page, for example, everything is in place. And that's just how easy it is to go ahead and migrate your site from one server to another or from one domain to another. Really, really simple to do. And again, totally free using WP Vivid Backup. Now, there's one other thing I said that I wanted to show you that I think the Pro version is definitely worth investing in, especially if you're building websites that are important, that need updates on a very regular basis. Let me just quickly show you what I'm talking about. As you can see, I've got a couple of updates for both my theme, for plugins, and so on. Now, I've installed the Pro version of WP Vivid Backup, and if we come into the settings section, open that up, inside there's one key thing that I think is invaluable if you have important sites. The auto backup before updating option. Now this is something that has saved my bacon many, many times. So we're going to make sure this is activated. You can see save the backup to localhost or send it to the cloud. It's up to you which way you want to run this. But what it basically does is whenever there's an update for any of the plugins, WordPress core, themes, those kinds of things, before those updates are installed, it will create a backup of just those folders, database entries, and so on for those updated files. Send that where you want, whether it's localhost or remote storage. And if anything goes wrong, you can quickly roll things back without having to restore your entire website. It's really quick, really easy, and just gives you that peace of mind should something go wrong. Like I say, I've used this many, many times and it's saved my bacon on many different occasions. So let's go ahead and take a look at this in action. All we need to do is hop over into our update section. We'll open this up. And you can see at the top now we get information saying auto backup before updating. So you can, if you want, to disable this each time you run an update. For me though, I want to make sure this is active. I say send backups to remote storage. And all I need to do then is go ahead and choose what I want to update. So I choose the plugins. We'll click on update plugins. And you see now what's happening is that's creating a rollback backup of just the files and database entries for those updates prior to making any changes. This will take a few minutes, few moments, depending upon the number of plugins, the speed of your server, the file sizes, those kinds of things. Once that's completed and the backup is done and sent over to wherever, it will then go ahead and install the plugins, and you're safe in the knowledge that if something goes wrong, you can roll back very quickly and easily. So as you can see now, the updates have completed. If we go back to our WordPress updates page, you can see I've got the option now to go ahead and update my theme. So let's do the same thing again. Let's choose to update the theme. Make sure this is being sent to where I want it to. Click on update theme. Again, you can see it's sending those files over, making the backup with just the files, send those over to the remote storage, and then it will go ahead and update the theme. So now that's completed and everything is updated. Let's hop over now into the WP Vivid Backup plugin. Open up the backups and restoration. And let's just say something has gone wrong with my update. A plugin's fallen over, the site is no longer working properly. I need to roll things back. So once we come into the backups and restoration section, you can see we've got backups and it says display all backups. Well, we can choose to open that up and see only things like rollback backups. We can select that and we can scan. You can see there's our backup of that. So that's uploaded backups. If you want to, we can come to all backups and we can scan that if we want to. And our backups, any of the backups are inside this. And now if we want to restore this, we can simply go ahead and restore it. But you'll notice if we take a look at the file size, 9.64 megabytes. My site is much bigger than that. So it is only updating and storing the information that it needs. If you want details, we can click on that and it'll give us information about the database and the plugins. But for now, we'll leave that as it is. We'll come back. We'll just go ahead and scan that one more time for our rollback. We'll scan. There's everything. And we'll say, let's restore that. So we'll choose the restore option. This is now going to tell us what's happening, what's going to be restored, etc, etc, etc. We'll click on next step. We'll say restore now. And that's going to go ahead, restore the folders and the files and the database entries that need to be done. So we can let that run. And once completed, now it gives us a congratulations notification. We can visit our site or we can view the log to see exactly what's going on. But we should find now if we go into the plugins section, all those updates are now sitting there waiting for us because we rolled back the database entries, the files and folders, but specifically only for those updates that we've just done. As you saw, the whole process of restoring things took just basically seconds to get everything back up. Now we can go ahead, see exactly what's causing the problem and make sure we can get things sorted. But hopefully what this has demonstrated is how easy it is to do all these different things with WP Vivid Backup. You may want to go pro, but I think the free version gives so much for most users that's going to be more than enough. Create your staging sites, your backup, your restoration, and your migration options, all in one simple to use plugin. As always, all of the applicable links are in the description below. And if you found this useful, let me know in the comment section. As always, my name is Paul C. This is WPTuts. Until next time, take care.